All right, so in this lecture video, I am going to talk about the unification of Italy and Germany. You need to be taking very strong notes each, like for instance, why so late? There's no bullet points that go with this. You just have to bullet point some of the things that I say. Um, each thing should have, this is just an outline. Yes, write this down, but who is Count Cavour? Where is he from? I'm going to say these things. What was his policy? How did he implement his policy? Why is it important? You guys need to write down more than what I'm just saying, and then I can check your notes and make sure you have everything. This is a very nuanced storyline, and there is going to be a classwork that has like a map or a couple maps that kind of show the different steps of unification. So make sure to go see the classwork and do the homework if there is homework. But okay, so let's go ahead and actually kind of review a little bit. At this point in time, we've talked about the early reforms of the 1800s um, and the early revolutions of the 1800s. France, along with all the other places in Europe except England, had two phases of revolutions, one in 1830 and one in 1848. And the 1848 revolutions were even more violent than the ones in 1830 because the ones in 1830 did not listen to the people, did not they were just crushed. So the anger that these people felt for not being heard, for the economic problems and the during industrialization that they were feeling were not being fixed. And by 1848, the revolutions were even more violent than before. Many of them still crushed in 1848, except in Britain. Britain could have had its own revolution in 1830, but instead, what they saw was Parliament actually listened to the people. The people didn't feel like they had enough of a vote in Britain. Um, they felt like it was only representing Parliament was only representing the upper land owning class. And so what they did is they passed the reform bill. They expanded the electorate. They expanded redrew the electoral district lines, made some factory reforms, reformed the slave trade, and ended it. So there are things that people learned from Britain, which was that the British system worked. You can petition your government, you can assemble and peacefully protest, and the British system would listen to them. So because the British system reformed, we didn't see a revolution, a violent revolution, happen in Britain like we saw happen in France and the rest of Europe, not once, but twice in 1830 and 1848. And then we talked a little bit about the movement of the early 1800s, which we're going to kind of review in today's lecture. So before we talk about nationalism and how this was a very powerful force that unified these two countries, we kind of have to review some terminology. Need to know terms. All right, so real quick, nationalism. Nationalism is a force that has grown so much in the last couple of decades since Napoleon. Napoleon took over most of Europe and put it under French control. And, people, let's just use this as an example. In the Holy Roman Empire, didn't quite know what made them German. The people in the north were Protestant, the people in the south were Catholic. There's all these different dialects. They haven't been unified. But under French control, they might not have known what made them German as a people, but they definitely knew that they hated the French. And so we're going to see that kind of sentiment, kind of nationalism, pride in one's people who have a cultural bond. That culture could be and include religion, not always, but or a common language or common history and struggle or common what all the things that make up culture, holidays, how you dress, what you eat, right? pride in your people with that common cultural bond, has been spreading and growing since the age of Napoleon. And the Congress of Vienna, which gave, after Napoleon fell from power, all of the traditional monarchs their power back, um, these ununified states are going to start to say, wait a second, all right, we don't have Napoleon controlling us anymore, but we still have Austria controlling us. We still have Spain controlling us in Italy, in the Italian city-states. And so why can't Italy control Italy? Why can't a strong German state control Germany? Um, and so really what the Congress of Vienna did is it just inspired nationalism to grow even more. Um, and it's really only a matter of time until we're going to see nationalism succeed in unifying these countries. Let's first talk about unification real quick. What unification means is small, little states are coming together and unifying into one larger state to form one country. So this time period, Germany is not a country yet. Italy is not a country yet. There's like a German Confederation, and then Italy, you can see from this map, like the blue and the blue. No, sorry, this green and this green. Parts of Spain, Italy are controlled by Spain. Parts of Italy are controlled by the Austrian Empire. Parts of Italy are controlled by France. It's very broken up. Some of them are independent in the Papal States, for instance, where Rome sits in the Vatican, and the Catholic Church. And so Italy is not a unified, it's not a country. Germany is not a country yet. And what we're going to see is these countries are going to eventually use nationalism, through nationalism and liberalism, unify into a full country. Italy is going to unify, but it's still going to be pretty weak. But it's a different story when Germany unifies. Germany is going to automatically, once unified, be the strongest country in all of Europe at this time period and really throw off the balance of power. And let's just quickly go over liberalism and conservatism, because these are very important terms. Liberals at this time period, in many cases, were often the champion of unification. They were the champion of nationalism. Oftentimes, in many countries, liberalism and nationalism almost went hand in hand. Some felt that they were almost interchangeable. Liberalism was the belief in personal freedom, the belief that the government should stay out of some of your affairs and have limited control over things like the economy. And the people should be the ones that have the control over the economy. The people should, the government really should just be protecting people's personal freedoms and individual rights. And really, they should be a government that interferes the least in people's problems under this form of liberalism. And they really wanted the right to vote, like individual freedoms, liberalism. So a lot of the people for a long time who were liberals who wanted individual rights were also nationalists, right? They also felt like their voices weren't being heard, say if you're Italian, but living in this part of the country, by the Kingdom of Spain, right? Or the Kingdom of France if you're living over here. And so oftentimes nationalism and liberalism went together. But what we're going to see in the unification of Italy and Germany is we're going to see conservatism utilize nationalism in order to unify. So remember what conservative means. It means to maintain or conserve the existing or traditional order. Doesn't necessarily mean anti-change, but they're willing to change and make concessions as long as it is to conserve the traditional order, really conserve or make stronger powerful monarchies and the people at the top, like nobles and the wealthy. So what we're going to see is we're going to see powerful conservatives use nationalism as a tool to unify Italy and Germany. They're going to create their own form of unification during this time period. So real quick, why so late? Why are Italy and Germany so late in unifying? When you look at this map, you see Spain, you see England, you see France. Um, they are clearly unified states and have been since we've started talking about world history too, since the Renaissance. And yet Italy has always been the Italian city-states, and Germany. I keep mentioning Germany, or what is now today Germany, but we have not yet talked about Germany as a country yet. It has been ununified. Why so late? When all these other countries have been unified so far. One of the big factors is the religious forces really slowed down the unification. When you look at Italy, Rome, Italy is in the Papal States. Um, it's where the Catholic Church sits, and the Catholic Church was a political power in and of itself in many ways, and really throughout all these years has not wanted to give up any of its independence, any of its power to a country, including Italy, if that were to become a country. So they wanted to remain independent, and they're smack dab in the middle of the Italian peninsula. So it makes it hard to unify. Germany is a little bit of a different issue. The northern Germans are, many of them, mostly Protestant, and the southern Germans are mostly Catholic. And so they did not have a religious unification movement, such as, France revoking the Edict of Nantes under Louis XIV, and everyone had to be Catholic, or everyone had to be Catholic under Philip II, or everyone had to be, or mostly had to be Protestant in England, right? There was a lot of religious diversity in Germany, which made it harder to unify over these years. But ultimately, it's only going to be a matter of time. Nationalism has grown so much since Napoleon, since the Congress of Vienna, that nationalism will be unified. The question is how do I put this? Did they want, if you were living during this time period, do you want to be unified under do you want to be a unified nation under a liberal or conservative government, right? Unification just means smaller states under the control of one bigger state, unified under one, and creates one large country. And do you want to be a republic, or do you want to be a monarchy? A republic would be liberal. A strong monarchy would be conservative. And conservatives see that nationalism is such a strong force and will succeed in unifying. And they're going to say, all right, but we better use this force to help monarchies, to help conservatives. So it's very interesting. It kind of switches around on people. So let's talk about the unification of Italy. One second. What's going on? Let's just look at the map real quick of the unification of Italy. We have Piedmont, Sardinia. It's dark purple. Piedmont, Sardinia. What we're going to see unification under Italy is there's going to be a leading Italian state that leads the way towards unification. Piedmont, Sardinia was actually created during the Congress of Vienna. What it did is they combined Piedmont and Sardinia to make it stronger, to limit the power of the French. And yeah, so it's a French buffer essentially. And what we're going to see is once Italy becomes unified, it's going to become unified under the monarchy of Piedmont, Sardinia, under the government of Piedmont, Sardinia. One second. This keeps happening. All right, so let's just talk about Cavour real quick. Count Cavour. Count Cavour is known for unifying northern Italy. He is write this down, prime minister of Piedmont, Sardinia, of the leading Italian nation state. And there is a king of Piedmont, Sardinia, and he is working on behalf of that king. And really, so he's actually quite a conservative. Um, he is somebody who wants to strengthen the monarchy of Piedmont, Sardinia. And really, if the monarchy of Piedmont, Sardinia is strengthened, then him as prime minister, he would be strengthened. So what he's going to do is he's going to um, extend control over all of the northern Italian city states during this time period, and he will use liberal and nationalist policies to achieve conservative ends. Some of the things that he's going to do is he's going to extend the right to vote to the middle class, and he's going to make it seem like, as he takes over some of these northern countries, or northern, not countries, city-states, it's going to make it seem like his control of Piedmont, Sardinia, that Piedmont, Sardinia will exert over northern Italy is not like a conquest, but is more like an invitation. He's going to make it appealing to join forces with Piedmont, Sardinia. So the problem that Count Cavour has is, well, before we move to that, the policy is called realpolitik. Let me write that down. And I think I even have it. Both these people will use it. Realpolitik. Realpolitik means real politics. It means practical politics. It means you need to do whatever it takes to get what you want. And so if it means bending the knee to some liberal policies, like giving people the right to vote, if it's going to strengthen the monarchy at the end of the day, he's willing to do it. And so that's what realpolitik means. Real politics, practical politics, doing whatever it takes. Even if it means using trickery, even if it means being immoral, he's going to use anything he can in order to strengthen the kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. So the problem that Piedmont, Sardinia really has at this time period is that they're competing with Austria. If you look right here, this is Austria. Austria has a big influence over some of the northern states, and Piedmont, Sardinia needs another great power and help to defeat another great power. They cannot, Piedmont, Sardinia itself cannot defeat the Austrians by themselves. They need a powerful ally. So ultimately, Count Cavour is going to use some trickery, and he's going to make Austria seem like the bad guy so that the Italians have an excuse to pick a fight with Austria. So what's going to happen is he's actually going to mobilize an Italian army. And mobilize does not just mean to move. It means to prepare for war. It means to stockpile ammunition, food, uniforms, and move all of that stuff from point A to B. And what mobilizing an army does is it really shows an intention to go to war. And so what Count Cavour will do is he'll kind of have an Italian army mobilize their army close to this guy's, his name is the Duke of Modena. He's an Austria ally. And the Duke, he's going to freak out. He's going to say, Austria, you need to help defend me. And so Austria says, okay. And they tell Italy, you need to back down from the Duke. But Italy wants a war. Count Cavour wants a war and obviously doesn't back down. So it looks like Austria is bullying little Piedmont, Sardinia, saying, and threatening them, you better back down, you better back down. And this gets France involved. France will come and help Piedmont, Sardinia, who's an enemy of the Austrian Empire, to help defeat the Austrian Empire. And ultimately, at the end of this time period, Count Cavour is going to unify all of the northern Italian city-states by taking them out of the control and influence of Austria with France's help. At this point in time, Count Cavour only has northern Italy. He's just going to be waiting on his hands for his next chance to join an alliance um, with somebody from the south to help him unify the south. And the alliance that he builds is the southerner named Garibaldi. So Garibaldi is actually a hero of the radical left. He is somebody who doesn't want any monarchy. He's someone whose reputation is extremely nationalist. He has his own private army of about 1,000 volunteer soldiers called the Red Shirts. He's someone who went around Europe to help out their revolutions. So he has made quite a global name for himself. And Count Cavour, what he's going to do is he's going to finance Garibaldi's invasion of Sicily. Sicily is right down here. Sicily at this time period was controlled by Spain, and the conditions on the island of Sicily were pretty rough, pretty harsh. It was practically like another version of serfdom. They were treating those people like almost like slaves or like serfs. And so there was a strong sentiment in Sicily to revolt against the Spanish. And so Count Cavour, a conservative who's pro-monarchy, helps fund a nationalist who's anti-monarchy to invade Sicily and free Sicily from Spanish control. So make sure, you can always slow down, rewind, things like that, in order to make sure you get everything down. And Garibaldi, he's actually going to be even more successful than even he thought. He's going to go invade Sicily with his red shirts, free the people very quickly, and then jump back over to the mainland. And from the south, really start to use his army to defeat, defeat these bigger Italian city-states. He's actually going to do so well that he's going to start to make his way to Rome, which is a really, really bad idea. He gets a little overconfident. Rome is, where the Pope sits. The French are very Catholic. Cavour knows for sure that if Garibaldi takes over Rome, the French, even though they helped out unifying northern Italy, would not stop at declaring war on Garibaldi for going after Rome, because Rome has been independent to this time period. So what Cavour will do is he'll rush south and convince Garibaldi that they're going to unify Italy without the Papal States. And ultimately, what we're going to see is in 1861, the Kingdom of Italy, the North and the South, are going to be unified under the King of Piedmont, Sardinia. And much later, which we'll talk about in just a second, they will unify and include the Papal States. But what this really shows is it shows a huge compromise after 1848, which the revolutions of 1848 throughout Europe were closer to success because they were very violent, but they were still a failure across the board. And what we're going to see is rulers of Piedmont, Sardinia support revolutionary liberals in order to help unify a country under a monarch's control. We're going to see a revolutionary, Garibaldi, a nationalist, liberal, willing to be unified under a king and not a republic. And they're both setting aside some of their beliefs in order to achieve a unified Italy. So ultimately, the Papal States, for a while, they're not going to join until, so that's 1870, till about 9 years later. France is going to be in a war with Prussia at this time period, so they're a bit distracted, and the war is going to go pretty badly for France. So Cavour is going to essentially see that France is distracted, and Italy is going to grab the Papal States Well, France has other problems on its hands. So ultimately, the Papal States will come in at a bit later. Now, does it mean? Oh, here we go. That Italy is now a strong country. In fact, Italy is still quite a weak country at this time period, even though it's unified. The north part of Italy is going to be quite industrialized, and the south is going to be much more agricultural, very much like in the United States. The north industrialized, the south agricultural. And for a long time, the north is pretty much going to let the south do really whatever it wants. It's going to be pretty much like a lawless state. And the big deal is that the unification of Italy does disrupt the balance of power, but it's not particularly strong. That is going to be a different story with Germany. When Germany unifies, it's going to be automatically one of the most powerful countries in the world. So let's review. The big points are just simply Count Cavour is willing to do whatever he takes. He is a Piedmont Sardinia conservative, right? Allies himself with France to defeat the Austrian Empire and unify northern Italy. He then allies himself with a nationalist in the south who will invade Sicily using Cavour's money, who will unify the south, and then they'll unify the south and the north together and add in the Papal States later. Under the kingdom of, so we'll have a unified Italy under the king of Piedmont, Sardinia. All right, now let's go on to Germany. Oh, whoops, still recording, sorry. So, let's see, German unification. We're going to see the growth of nationalism is going to be used to be employed by conservatives, just like in Italy. There's going to be some strong parallels. But first, we kind of have to look at the map real quick. So, the two strongest nation states in the German Confederation at this time period are Prussia, which is the blue. There's Western Prussia, Eastern Prussia, and then there's Austria. Austria has, they have German speakers in both, but Austria has a bit more diversity because it has some people in the Balkans like Croatia and Hungary and some Italy as well, and some Germans. But Prussia is the majority of, is mostly made up of German speakers. But Austria, up until this time period, has always been the leader in the German city-states or nation-states. The Habsburgs were once the monarchs of the Holy Roman Empire, which loosely controlled all of the German states. And the Habsburgs were from Austria. So Austria traditionally was one of the stronger, was much stronger than Prussia in its control of all of the German states. So what we're going to see is we're going to see Prussia is going to need an ally in order to defeat Austria. So Prussia, again, Prussia's up here, the blue, is who we're really focusing on today. Prussia, Otto von Bismarck is the prime minister of Prussia. He's a conservative politician. As a young man, he was kind of a loose cannon. He was from a noble family. He's somebody who would party at night and knock on people's doors in the middle of the night to see if his friends wanted to party with him. And if they said no, he would shoot out their windows. But somehow he kind of made his way to the top of the country, and he's working for the king, working with the king. And he's working to strengthen the king of Prussia as the prime minister. So what Otto von Bismarck is willing to do is he's willing to compromise and use realpolitik, which is a policy, the ends justify the means, very Machiavellian. He's willing to use some nationalism and some liberalism to accomplish conservative goals. Make sure you write that down. Willing to use nationalism, and some liberalism to accomplish conservative goals. Conservative means pro-monarchy goals. And ultimately, what he's going to want to do is he wants to become the strongest country, and Prussia is going to take the lead in unifying Germany. But they kind of got to get Austria out of the way. What he knows from realpolitik of this politics, real politics, practical politics, politics of blood and iron, to get what they want, having meetings and diplomacy, they're not going to get what they want. Austrians are not just going to leave unless they are forced to leave using warfare. So he's going to realize that in order for the Prussians to be able to be the unifying force of Germany, they have to get rid of the Austrians and kick them out of the German Confederation. And they have to do so using blood and iron, using force, and not using their words and powerful speeches and things like that. That's not practical. What's practical is war. So what's going to happen is kind of the backstory and the background is Denmark is right up here, and Denmark is going to annex these two territories, Schleswig and Holstein. Schleswig and Holstein are territories that he's kind of always had in his control a little bit, but all of a sudden this is Bismarck's time to champion nationalism. We can't let Denmark take these two territories that have some German speakers. We can't let that happen. Nationalism, we need to stick together. Let's not let these two territories be controlled by a different power when there's German speakers here. And so ultimately, Austria and Prussia are going to work together to take these territories out of Denmark's hands. And the piece was that Prussia would get one of these territories, and Austria would get another one of the territories. But it was thought to be temporary. It was thought that Prussia would eventually give up one of the territories to Austria. But Bismarck wants to provoke a war with the Austrians, so he's going to refuse to give up one of the territories gained from Denmark to Austria, because he needs a war with Austria in order to unify the northern part of Germany under Prussian control. And so he wants a war, and he thinks he's going to win the war because Bismarck is very good at foreign politics, and he really understands the importance that industrialization has changed and impacted modern warfare. He had people go to the United States during their Civil War to study their USA military war tactics, and he realized that the railroad system was a huge piece of military tactics that was strengthening military. So Prussia had a huge railroad construction network that would strengthen them militarily. And ultimately, Bismarck is going to defeat Austria in the Austro-Prussian War, using his superior understanding of the importance of railroads. And really what he could do is he defeated them quite brutally, and he could have continued to go south and take over Vienna and destroy Austria if he wanted to. But at the end of the day, there's lots of German speakers in Austria. So in the long term, Bismarck saw Austria as a natural ally once Germany was unified under Prussia. So he's not going to stick it to Austria. And Prussia is going to be unified. Prussia is going, after the Austro-Prussian War, the end result is there's going to be a North German Confederation, and then add this to it, under the control of the Prussians, the Prussian kingdom. So annexed by Prussia, that's the blue, joined Prussia in the north. So all this territory up here, all together, pretend it was one color. Bam. That is the North German Confederation. Now, just like in Italy, the North was unified first, and we're going to see the South unified in a different kind of way. The South was a bit more weary. Again, they border Austria. They're more stronger natural allies with Austria. And the South, the Catholic South, compared to the Protestant North, really saw the North German Confederation as an expansion of Prussian power, which essentially is what it was. They're not going to jump at the opportunity to join and make Prussia even stronger. And so what Prussia's going to do is Bismarck is going to use liberalism to make it appealing to join the North German Confederation under Prussia. Germany, or the North German Confederation, is going to be the first when they write their constitution to give universal male suffrage. He's going to give the vote, which is a liberal idea that is usually anti monarchy. He's going to give the vote to the working class. Germany, or the North German Confederation, is going to be doing this before even Britain. And so this is like cutting edge liberalism. Bismarck's willing to use liberalism to make it appealing for the Southerners to join the North. And then there's going to be this thing called the Ems telegram. The Ems telegram is a doctored telegram, a piece of mail in which it makes it look like the French king is insulting the Prussian king. It's doctored, it's fake. And again, realpolitik. He's willing to use anything, even if it's immoral, to spark a war with France. Because what he realizes is the one thing that the one tool that Germany will use in order to, or Prussia will use to strengthen and get the Southerners to unify with the Northerners is nationalism. After he doctored a telegram that made it look like the French king was insulting the Germans, he's doing this to provoke a war with France. And the nationalism within southern Germany is going to say, wait, we hate the French. We hate the French as Southerners. You guys hate the French as Northerners. We will help you fight the French. To have a common enemy against a people with a shared common cultural bond, even if it's a loose one, will be what unifies North and Southern Germany during the Franco-Prussian War. So in the Franco-Prussian War, the South will join the North in fighting the French. And at the end of this war, we're going to see Germany unified. It's going to be quite the quite a embarrassing peace treaty. It's going to be signed in the Mirror Room, which is traditionally in the Palace of Versailles, where treaties have always been signed. And northern and southern Germany are going to be unified into the country of Germany. And it's going to punish France as well. And France is going to lose, where's that territory? Alsace-Lorraine, to Prussia as well, or to Germany. And it's going to be a huge source of resentment for the French people. They're going to want to get their revenge. So as you look at this, everything that has a little bit of color, that's not this gray, is now unified Germany. So see that outline? Is now unified Germany under a Prussian king. The Prussian king is a Kaiser, and Bismarck is its prime minister. And what the unification of Germany shows is that nationalism can be used by conservatives to create a unified empire, to unify what was once, for a very long time, ununified. It is now, as a country, Germany, the most powerful country in Europe and potentially even the world. And it's going to lead to a huge change in the balance of power. And ultimately, we're we're going to see nationalism kind of continue to grow. And really, World War One is right around the corner. And as you know, Germany is a leading power um, during World War One. They're very nationalistic, and so yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to it. We first have to kind of talk about uh, industrialization and imperialism before we get to World War One. But World War One, one of the biggest causes of World War One is a very strong nationalistic feeling in many of these countries, and so Germany was unified using German nationalism. Um, so it makes sense that it's going to be a leading player in World War One, which is right around the corner. Um, but all right, so I hope you show me your notes when you get back. I know it was a long lecture, um, but I think it is a really interesting story of how nationalism and liberalism, these two powerful forces of this time period, can be used by both liberals and conservatives, in this case, mostly by conservatives, to achieve their goals, which is to unify these countries um, under a pro monarchy. But okay. All right. Thank you so much. Make sure you go to the classwork. If you're able to print it off, that would be great. Um, and it's just like a reinforcement. It's just kind of like a storybook of showing you visually on the maps how things are changing after each small war. And it will kind of be a really good study material. But okay, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.